welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how to do some watercolor and then take what you make and put it onto physical products like this, like this, like that. So we're going to do it. Let's go. Okay, let's get into it. So I'm going to go over some basic supplies that are handy to have and ones that I personally like. This is our little sketch we have going on, so we're going to get into that and I'm going to show you step by step how to do that. Before we get to that though, I want to show you just some handy things that I think will be helpful for you. So something that I like to always have is this is kind of like my scratch pad for watercolor. So if I'm not sure what a color is going to look like, or I want to test it, or I want to test like a different style that I wanted to try on like my actual piece, before I get to that, I'm going to do it on my test scrap sheet of paper here. So this is the one I'm going to be using. It has like a random sketch on it that I'm never going to use. So I'm going to use that one for my scrap sheet of paper, but you can kind of see, you know, different values that I've tried, different, I don't even know what some of these shapes are. That was a flower that I was playing with. And something that I think is kind of fun for me personally, like my style that I like is watercolor and pen and ink. Even pencil too, I like, but I like that kind of illustrative style. And so if I was not sure if the piece that I was working on, if I wanted that to be the illustrative style, I could do that on here. So for example, this is just some random flower that I did a few months ago, I guess. And so I can play with that and see, do I want to put pen and ink on it? Do I not? Do I want to leave it as is? What do I want to do? So these pens are actually called microns and they're kind of amazing. They don't bleed on you. They're really good for going over your watercolors and making different areas pop. But I really like these. You can get all of this stuff at Michael's, Hobby Lobby, wherever, whatever craft store you're by, you can get them there. But I could go over here and I could just kind of play with these leaves and doing some different shapes of leaves. Do I like this style? I personally do, because I think it just looks really cute. So I can do that. I can go over the petals if I want to, but this is a good thing to have, just kind of that little scratch pad for your watercolors. The second thing that might be handy to have is totally up to you. So the way that I like to teach watercolor, I've been teaching these since 2012. Workshops like this, but the things that I like to have, you may not like that more illustrative style. You may like more realistic. You may like more abstract. It's totally up to you what you want to do. I'm just here to get you excited to paint something. Okay, so these are the pens that I like. These are the color pencils. These ones are okay. I actually got these at Michael's not too long ago just to kind of test them. These are watercolor pencils and they come in a nice set with all these different colors. And some people like to only do watercolor pencils and they don't, you know, worry about doing actual watercolors. They just like to use these, which is totally fine. Do the thing. For me, I like to use these as color pops is what I say. I don't know. That's what I call it. But you can use these on your final project, your finished project, and just have them kind of pop the color. I think it helps embellish. You can get nice detail. You can make different areas glow in different ways. So we might play with those today and these. And yeah, I just wanted to show you these. Ta-da! One more thing, I'm not going to use this today, but some people like to have this on hand. This is called fluid masking, is what I call it. You can get this at the craft store. What this is if you are wanting to paint something, let's say we were doing this one and we wanted to make sure that the holes in our leaves stayed pure white as the paper. What we can do is we can take this fluid masking. It looks kind of like glue when it comes out. You shake it up and you can paint the fluid masking on the areas that you want to keep pure white. You let it dry. It dries super duper fast. You let it dry, then you can do whatever you want. And then as long as everything is dry at the end, you'll be able to peel up that fluid masking and wherever it was is going to stay perfectly white. Woohoo, right? So that's something you may want to play with at some point. I'm not going to do that one today though. All right, one more thing I want to go over is brushes. So the different brushes that you may choose to use, obviously they come in all different shapes and sizes. This one is really fun. I'm going to show you how to use this one in a second. But typically you'll get sets at like Michael's and they'll have a set of 12 brushes, or you can buy one-off brushes that are like super high quality and real fancy. That's totally fine. If you get a set, like These ones came in a set with a bunch of other ones. You'll probably have your favorite brush or your favorite couple brushes, and that's typical. I gravitate towards like a medium and a small. I don't really use the big brushes very often, like the real big watercolor brushes, unless I'm doing a large space of color. Otherwise, I like more control, a little bit more control, and so I'll use these, this and smaller to get more control. The more detailed you want to do, the smaller your brush. I guess I shouldn't say that. For me, what I like to do if I'm doing something with a very high detail, maybe I'm doing hair, maybe I'm doing, you know, whatever, I'll use a smaller brush because the tip is smaller. So I can really control where the paint is going, and that's just me. You may like to have, you know, a larger brush where you can get the tip real small too. It's totally up to you, but these are the brushes that I'll be using. And then this is a fan brush, and I actually really like doing these with acrylic paint. I had it wet, that's why it was wild and crazy. So I just fan these out a little bit. I'm going to show you different textures that you can get using this fan brush. None of my watercolors are awake yet, is what I like to say. And so what I'm going to do, so I can show you kind of what this looks like, the texture that you can get with this brush, I'm going to take, let's move this over here. I'm going to take my watercolor paintbrush, I'm going to dip it in my water, and I'm going to wake up one of my colors, just like this. You could even use a spray bottle if you want to. So see, I just woke it up, which basically means it's ready to rock and roll. I have nice control. I'm doing nice little lines like this. So we're going to go over different techniques here in a minute, but we just woke up that paint. Yay us. And now I'm going to get my fan brush ready to roll. So I'm going to dip it in the water. Here, I'll move this over just so you can see it right there. I'm going to dip it in the water. And then I always have a paper towel next to me just to kind of wipe it off a little bit. You don't want it to be dripping. So see, if I dip it in here, it's dripping wet. All the water is like falling off. When you do that, you can do that. That's totally fine. You're going to get a lot of paint movement and a lot of water movement. So you're not going to have a lot of control or detail, which you may like. That's totally fine. So we're going to dip it in here and then dip it in here, dab it. We're going to go into what we just woke up, which is this really pretty orange color. And then that's kind of the texture you can get with a fan brush. So this is fun to play with if you are doing, you could even do a plant leaf like that. That actually kind of looks like a leaf. What if we did that on the other side and we flipped our paper around and we did exactly like what we just did? What if we did that? That one got a little crazy. That's okay. Ooh, look at this. There's our fan brush. We can go back in with our smaller detailing brush and draw a little line. Now look, we have a leaf. How exciting. But that's why I'm saying having a nice little scratch pad, you never know what's going to happen. So we're not going to be using this fan brush today. I just wanted to show you the different textures that you can do, things you can play with. You can make grass, you can make whatever you want textures with your fan brush. What we're going to focus on is making some really pretty, colorful leaves and plants. And so what we're going to do is we're going to pick one of our favorite brushes. Maybe we don't have a favorite brush yet. That's fine. You'll probably have one by the end of the week. Let's say that. You'll have a favorite brush by the end of the week. So what we want to do, if we are wanting to make colorful plants, more abstract looking, like free flowing plants, what we want to think about is how our paint is going to move on the paper. So if our paint is very dry, it doesn't have a lot of water, it doesn't have a lot of movement. So our goal when we are going to start making colorful leaves, colorful plants, colorful anything where we want the color to really blend together and move really nicely together, our goal is we don't want too much water and we don't want not enough. And this is where people get frustrated with watercolor because they struggle finding kind of that balance. And I completely get it. But if you were going to learn how to play football, you're not going to go out there and be like, oh, I've never played football before, I'm going to be amazing today on the first day, right? It takes practice, and that is what we are doing, right? We're practicing. And now you have this sheet where you can practice what you're doing, and you can see, okay, that was too much water. Okay, that's not enough. Where is the middle ground? And so I'm going to show you what too much water looks like so that you have an idea, and I'm going to show you what not enough looks like. This one right here is blending really well. That is what we want. So if you have too much, what you're probably doing is you're dipping your brush in here, and see how it's dripping quite a bit. It's dripping quite a bit. And so what we want to do is we want to dab off our brush a little bit. But if we have too much water, we're going to see dripping off of our brush. We're going to see pooling. If you can see this within there's even little bubbles here. Like, that's a lot of water. And then we're gonna see that our paper is too wet as well. So if I have too much water, so you can see this mound of water on here, and you're thinking, well, I want it to blend really well. Like, watercolor needs water in order to move. Here's what's gonna happen. And don't get me wrong, this can actually be a really cool effect, but you don't have a ton of control. And when it does dry, what it can end up looking like when it does dry is kind of splotchy. And we would rather have a smoother look to our watercolor, at least for this project. You can do splotchy on a different project. We're gonna have a little bit more control on this project. So you're gonna see the color kind of pooling. If you were to pick up this paper, you're gonna get drips. It's gonna drip off the paper. That's what too much water looks like. And even a lot of times the weight of the paper, so your paper, it'll say on the front of it, it'll say like 140-pound paper, 300-pound paper, whatever. It'll say the poundage, and the higher poundage, the more water your paper can take. And if it's 140, you want, which is typical and it's fine, it's perfect to start. This one I think is 140. But you want to be careful the amount of water that you use. So you can even see it's not drying, it's just kind of pooling. And as that starts to dry, you're gonna see the color kind of expand to different areas. Now, just for kicks, I'll show you what this does look like. And again, like I said, this can even, if you do a lot of water like this, it can come out pretty cool. So doing wet on wet, which means wet paper, wet paint. This is super wet, like we've talked about. You can dip in different colors. You can get kind of a tie-dye effect, which again, like I said, can be super cool. There's nothing wrong with this. Honestly, anything that you do, let's be honest, when you're creating, there's nothing wrong with anything. You can do whatever you want. This is your piece. You go at it. Have fun. Do the thing. But this is what it's going to look like. So it's going to dry kind of splotchy. Some areas are going to have more paint, some will have less. And that's just what you're going to get when you have too much water. So if you decide to go that way, do it. Have at it. If you decide to have too less, if you decide that you have not enough water, or you want to see what that, okay. Now, if we're doing this, this is too much water. This is the perfect amount, which I'm going to show you in a minute how to do that. And then let's show you what not enough water looks like. So sometimes people are a little worried about water because they don't want to end up here. And that's fine. We're practicing. This is our practice sheet. So not enough water looks like, I'm going to go over here. Maybe I'll go over here to my green. How about that? And if you notice, I dried off my paintbrush quite a bit over here. I didn't dip it back in the water. I haven't woken up my paint. I go over here and I'm touching this green, and then we're gonna get not great movement. It's gonna be kind of splotchy. It's gonna have these little breaks in color here, and that's what not enough water looks like. You don't have some smooth lines, some smooth movement, and that's what we kind of want to avoid, at least for this project. I will say though, because there is nothing wrong with anything, right? We just talked about this. This can be cool texture if you ever wanted to do that, where you don't have enough and you want kind of like that scattered texture. It's really cool, but we're not going for that today. We're going for the happy medium, which is this one right here. And so in order to get the happy medium, we want to make sure our paint is woken up. So I already this paint is super wet. That's the one that we did the too much water in. So I'm gonna pick a different color. I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna wake up this red. And you notice it's just wet enough to where it's shiny, it's nice and glossy. I have movement, and so you can even see how this is turning kind of wider. It's because the paper is starting to blow there and the water and the paint is going kind of over to the side. And if I were to have a nice smooth line here and I touched it, look at that. That red is just gonna go into that orange, right? Because wherever the water flows, the paint will go. That's a lesson for a different day. Okay, so I woke up this red, and then maybe I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna wake up this yellow again. It was starting to get a little dry. I get it nice and glossy, and we are ready to rock and roll. My paintbrush is nice and wet, but we're not dripping. My paints have been woken up, and I'm gonna go ahead and lay down on dry paper my yellow. So I'm gonna move it. I'm gonna pick up a little bit more paint. We're gonna move it back and forth till we have a nice area of yellow. I'm gonna clean off that brush so we're not dipping our yellow into our red over here. I'm gonna clean it off, dab it just a little bit, and I'm gonna pick up some red. I'm gonna do the exact same thing right next to that yellow. I'm just gonna lay it back and forth. And you can see they're starting to move together and they're starting to blend really well. Now what I just did is I got my paintbrush wet again, and I'm just kind of pulling them together. Sometimes you have to help the paint move, because this orange or red that I just used, it's very pigmented, it's very thick, and the yellow has a little bit less pigment, and so the red tends to dominate. So when that does happen, you just move your brush back and forth until you get that blend in a way that you really like. Okay, so this is what we're going to play with. Okay, this is what we want, a nice solid pretty back and forth of the color. You can still see over here this one's going wild and crazy which again, that is fine if you want that look. One more thing I do want to show you is brush technique that will come in handy when we get over to the plants that we're doing today. In order to do like the leaves, if you don't have a fan brush, which is fine, I'm not even going to use that one today either. Getting over to our plant picture that we're going to be drawing today, we want to make leaves that have that nice ferny look. That's what we're going to call it today, the ferny look. So if you can see up close, we have one leaf, but it's made up of little small individual leaves like that. And in order to do that, there's a couple different techniques that you can use. Well, there's a couple different techniques that you can use, which I'm going to show you right now. But one way to do that, you know, the mixed media style that I like, that I talked to you about a minute ago, one way to do that would be to just go ahead and lay down some color. It can be any color that you want. I'm gonna go ahead and wake up my blue, and I'm going to do just a nice solid area of color just like this. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just let that dry while I'm showing you this other thing, and we're gonna come back to it when it's nice and dry. So having a block of color like this, you can just lay down a block of color, let it dry. This is more that illustrative style. Then you can go back over it with one of your micron pens or even your watercolor pencils to really make it pop. That's one way to do that. The other way is with a little brush technique. And this is where having, again, the scrap piece of paper is going to help you so you can really master this technique. So that image that I just showed you that we're going to be painting here in a minute, this one, we have the nice stick going up here, we have the leaves coming out, and then individual leaves like so. So in order to do that, we want to make sure that we have a brush that has a nice tip. We don't want a flat head brush, at least I don't, maybe you choose to. I like the round tip because it gets really small at the end. And so what we can do is we can make this one of our leaves, just have a nice solid line, and then just go in like this. And so that brush technique, I call it flicking. I don't know, I'm so technical, but this is one way to do it. And there you're gonna get the nice style of the leaf, the nice texture. You can play with this, you can make it wavy, you can make it straight. It's totally up to you what you want to do. That's one way that you can do it, is do it like that. Now this guy over here, he's dry enough. He's dry enough to show you what I was talking about. So here's what I was talking about with that illustrative style, which really you could do on both. We're just gonna do it on this one. And that is to take our micron. This is a micron 05. I'm gonna move this a little bit, and then you can make this leaf however you want it. So if you want it to look like that, you can just take it, draw a line up in the middle, and then you can just use it with your hands instead of using it with a brush. Some people have shakier hands, they're not super sturdy, and they're like, I don't know how I'm gonna make it because my hand is not sturdy. I don't know how I'm gonna get those lines. Don't worry about it. Just do it with a pencil, right? You can do that. You can even go as far as doing this if you want to. Then you have that color pop behind, you have the micron on top, and it's a very like playful illustrative style. Okay, so as we can see, when I was moving my scratch sheet, I wasn't paying attention. My bad, that happens, it's fine. When I was moving my scratch sheet of paper, I dribbled some of that orange, which really isn't gonna matter in the long run, but there's a way that you can kind of scrub that out really gently. And what I'm going to do is I'm gonna take my brush, I'm drying it off really nicely. I have to work kind of quickly. And my dry brush is gonna suck up that paint that I just dribbled on there. Good teaching lesson right here. And you'll still see a little bit of a shadow. And if you do, you can get your brush a little bit wet, just dip it in your water, slowly move it back and forth, scrub it out, dry off your brush again, and then just suck it up. Suck up that area. So now it's like it was never there. It's a little bit harder if you're using like a black or like a dark blue, dark purple, because those are very heavy pigments, but the orange came off pretty well, and we're not even gonna see that on our final project. Let's just play and see what happens. So my water, I'm gonna go ahead and change this out. You can still see through it, but I just want a fresh water since I'm starting on my final project. This is actually really dangerous what I'm doing, where I'm like pulling my watercolors over here onto here because I'm gonna dribble just like what I did. But that was a good teaching moment, and so is this. And this is how I can get everything into the frame right now, so we're all just gonna have to deal with it, and it's fine. So here we go. We're gonna start at the top, and I'm just gonna slowly work my way down. As you can see, I have a nice little paintbrush. I don't have a real thick one. I don't have a big one. I have a little one because I'm doing fine detail with this line work. I'm just gonna bring that blue all the way down here. I made that base a little bit thicker just to make it more leaf-like. And then once we have that, I'm gonna go ahead and dip in my purple. And again, we're doing this kind of colorful, just loosely, just play with it. I'm adding a little bit of that purple onto the stem. Just enough, just to give it a little oomph, you know? So it's not just blue, it has a nice little fade going on to it. Now, once I have that done, I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna start doing the little offshoots of those little leaves. Now for me, what I want to do is for this particular leaf, I'm gonna do more of this style. So the individual fluffies on. My terminology today is top notch. I'm gonna do the little fluffies on each of the stems. And so I'm gonna do just like what I did on that main stem. And I'm just gonna start with my light blue. And we're gonna go in here. Doesn't matter which one we start with. We're gonna do it nice and gently, just like that. You can do all the stems at once if you want to. You can do one at a time. It's totally up to you. And then I'm gonna go in and just very loosely start putting in those little leaves. Do, 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 do. And the reason I did that shape when I was tracing is so I know when to stop. So we know the shape of the leaf. So I can kind of use that as my guide. And that's what we're gonna do all the way around. If you're not sure if you have too much water or not enough water, again, you have that little scrap sheet. I had a little bit too much on this one, so I got rid of some of it there. We're gonna go over here to the other side. And I'm not gonna be too serious. Don't be too serious. Just have fun with it. That's the point of creating, have fun with it. This is what we're gonna do all the way around. If some areas get thicker, if some don't, that's fine. It's not a big deal. Let yourself enjoy the process, man. Here we go. When I get to a place, so let's say I'm coming up and I'm rounding this curve, I want it to be a little bit darker up there. I'm just gonna wake up my darker blue. And for me, I'm just going to start adding it in just a little bit to the sides of this one, just here and there. That's how we're gonna get a nice little blend. So see, this one is just that teal, then we have the teal and the blue. This one's just gonna be straight blue for now. We might add in a little more, we'll see. Now I'm gonna break probably all the rules of watercolor, and that's fine. But the reason I had you sketch this super lightly is so that we could go back and get rid of any lines that we don't want. If our pencil lines were too dark, not much we can do about that. So I just have a little pencil, and honestly, you should probably use a white eraser, not an orange one like this, but that's fine. And you wanna make sure that this is so dry. I let this dry for a long time before I started to do this, and I'm just barely, my lines are so light you can barely even see them, but I'm just getting rid of the little pencil lines that I can see. And they look like it's not shiny, it's not, you know, it may not be shiny or anything, and so you may think that it's dry, but it's not dry all the way through the paper. And so one way to check is to go like this, and if it's cool to the touch, it's still damp, and then if it's cool to the touch on the back, it is still damp as well. So you don't want to mess with it until it's completely dry, not damp, not cool to the touch, nothing. So we're just gonna erase all of our little lines. Most of them, they come off super easy. Like I said, if you have a white eraser, it's even better than this one. I don't know where mine is. It's hanging around. It's probably in my drawing stuff. Okay, I told you if you wanted to get fancy, I would show you how to get fancy. Now on this plant that we just did, I don't really want to do the ink that I normally do like on top of my watercolor. I really like it as it is, but you can always use a little bit of pop, right? And that's where these guys are going to come in handy. This is the watercolor pencils. I'm going to show you how to use those. I use them just like watercolor, or just like basic color pencils, but there's a few different little tricks that you can use for these. So on my scrap sheet of paper, I just did a couple of the little leaves that I did on my main picture. And what I can do now is I can just go in and decide if I want to embellish these with any of these colors. I could go in with this guy, I could go in with, well, any color. And so if I did decide to go in with this one, maybe I would go on this one right here, and I would just start using it just like a regular colored pencil. And I'm not sure how much the camera is gonna pick this up. Now, if I were to come over here and I just made a little puddle of this, I'm just gonna draw a little circle there. I can come over and I can use my water and get in here and wake it up, as I say, and it's gonna move just like watercolor. So if you see that, so it goes on just like a color pencil would, just like this, just like a regular color pencil. Once you add water to it, okay, fridge, did you hear that? Oh my gosh, it's still going. Okay, that was my fridge saying hello. So you put that down just like a regular color pencil. You get your brush wet, and then you can go in and move that color around. So it's really good, again, if you want some places where you want more detail, where you can, you know, sharpen this and get a fine point, and it's also good if you want to move some color around. So down here, like I said, what I like to do is just use it as adding a little bit more detail, a little bit of color pop. So this is adding a little bit of that aqua down on the bottom of that leaf, but it's a little bit brighter than the teal or the aqua color that I was using with my paint. So I think that looks really nice. And then I had a pink one, here it is. Love this color. Ah. So if I go in here, I can say, okay, like I want to go in and just add in some line detail like that. I can go on this side. And again, we're just testing. We may be like, well, no, this pink doesn't really flow with the vibe that I'm going for. Or we may say, maybe it'll look better on this color. So if I go, ooh, yeah. If I go over here, I can just use it like a colored pencil, and I can add just a little bit of, even just a little bit of texture is nice. A different kind of texture than you would get with just a basic watercolor. Or I can decide to go in and move that color around like this. And it's just gonna help it blend out a little bit more. It just gives you a little bit of a different look. So if you can see, that pink is becoming more vibrant, which is kind of nice. But I'm losing a little bit of the detail that I want in the background. So I don't think I'm gonna use this on my main one, but that's how you can play with these watercolor pencils if you want to. I'm even gonna up my exposure just a little bit as well. And then once I get it in the way that I like it, I'm gonna go up here and I'm gonna save this file. You're gonna go in and you're going to go to this free background remover tool. It's www.remove.bg. You're gonna click there and you're gonna remove the background of your image that you designed. This is what it should look like. So once you have your file, you can go ahead and download. So we have our nice image here. We're going to go ahead and download it. And that is the image that we're then going to take over to Printify. Now, if you're not familiar with Printify, Printify is a print on demand supplier, a print on demand company, which basically means you can design whatever you want and create a free account on Printify. I have a link in the description of this video, and you can take your images and put them on whatever product you want. Once you do that, Printify, will handle the creation of the product, the printing, the shipping, the packaging, everything. They will handle everything. Hallelujah. Woohoo. And if you're not sure, if you are thinking about setting up your own shop, if you want to create a Shopify store where you can start selling Printify products, so your designs on products, I have a complete Shopify tutorial on my channel. You can check that out. And here's what it's going to look like. So you're going to go over here. You're going to create your free Printify account. And you can even connect Printify to Etsy as well if you want to, so you can sell on Etsy. But you're going to go over here to the catalog, and all of these are different products that you can then put your image on. So I personally like doing mugs, and I love doing tumblers. I love doing notebooks. If you've been to my website or you've seen any of the products I've designed, that's the stuff that I like to do. I love doing pillows. Pillows are fun. We're going to do a tumbler today. So I'm going to go over here and go to bottles and tumblers. And then I am going to pick one. Now, the company that I like using is Spoke. So these are print providers that work with Printify. And I like to select Spoke Custom Products. And it's going to populate all of the products that Spoke can do. And look, these are 3. I'm just going to click the 20-ounce tumbler just so you guys can see what this is going to look like. Now, once we're here, we're going to scroll down and go over here to say Start Designing. I'm going to say New Design from My Device. This is where we're going to upload that image that we just created in Downloads. We're going to say Open. It's going to upload it into Printify, and then we are going to decide what we want to do. Now, one thing that you want to, so since this is something I took from my phone, one thing you want to pay attention to right here is the medium resolution. You want this to say high resolution, which I'm not going to do it this big. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to shrink it down a little bit. So you see if I shrink it down a little bit, it goes to high res. That's what you want. You want it to say high resolution. And then you can just lay these however you want. Now, if I decided that I want Printify to turn this design that I made into a repeating pattern, I can scroll down right here and say create pattern. I'm going to click that on, and then look at this. And now I can adjust this pattern however I want. So let's get it kind of in the middle. They have little snap lines, or we can do it like this. We can do it up and down like that. Oh, so once we have this, and again, we can shrink it lower, we can make it bigger. We just want to make sure that we're watching this resolution over here. I'm going to go over here to preview, and you're going to be able to see what your amazing watercolor design looks like on a tumbler. And here it is. So this is the front. You have the left side, the right side, the top. And again, this is, you do not have to make this. Like Spoke Design will make this for you. They will print it, they will ship it, they will package it, they will do all the things. And you get to collect the profit from it. How cool is that? So I hope you like this video, and let me know any questions that you have in the comments. Again, if you want the full Shopify tutorial, that is on my channel, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.